Georgia Governor Sonny Perdue recently led a delegation to Cuba to discuss trade and tourism opportunities. Georgia Farm Bureau President Zippy Duval accompanied the governor to the communist nation to discuss agricultural trade and says he hopes that in the future trade restrictions will ease to provide much-needed goods for the people of Cuba.
I think sometime in the future this country will realize the great potential down there. And if you go and look and see the people, the need that's down there, there's 11.5 million people there, a little over what we got here in the state of Georgia, and they are in desperate need of the products that we produce, and we would like to be able to grow those products and see them shipped down there. It would be good for Georgia agriculture, and it'd be good for them.
Georgia ranks third among all U.S. states in exporting to Cuba, but would still like to see trade increase over the next few years. Because the trade embargo is still in effect, there must be a third party involved with the trading of goods. Officials say trading that way is very cumbersome.
Now, if we turn our attention to the United States, clearly the U.S. embargo remains very much in force, and the ability of average Americans to travel to Cuba is extremely limited, although there are several thousand embargo busters that go down via third countries in the Caribbean or perhaps Mexico or Canada. And the trade between the United States and Cuba is extremely limited. However, a few years ago, U.S. agribusiness got into the game and lobbied for a little amendment in Congress that allows all cash, one-way food sales from American food companies to Cuba. Over the last 5 years, more than $2.5 billion of trade has taken place between the United States and Cuba. And in 2007, the United States was Cuba's 5th largest trading partner. Now, this comes to a surprise to many people who think we don't trade with Cuba at all. And this has actually suited the food companies quite nicely, as they don't have to face any competition with Cuban product, as the Cubans aren't allowed to sell to us, and they receive all cash for their goods. U.S. policy towards Cuba more broadly has basically been predicated on this notion of a poof moment, that at one date in the future, the Castro government will go poof, vanish in a cloud of smoke. And at that time, a pro-market democracy that wants friendly relations with the United States will take its place. Well, that is plan A, basically, for the United States, waiting for the poof. And at this point, it seems like we may want to start planning for plan B, which is relating to some sort of gradual communist succession process in Cuba, as that is, in fact, what appears to be taking place on the island.
Well, it was in the year 2000 that Congress passed a law that allowed cash sales of food and agricultural products to this island nation, an exception to what had been a 4-decade-old trade embargo with the Fidel Castro regime. Now, since then, we have seen sales with Cuba shoot up through the roof, now approaching close to $1 billion and making it the 21st largest export market for our country. The streets of Havana are filled these days with tourists from all around the world. But among the revelers are trade delegations from farm states in the U.S., wanting to export food to this island nation just off the Florida coast.
And I think anytime you find an expanding market, it's very important that Oklahoma agriculture goes and explores those markets and looks for new opportunities for our farmers and ranchers in our state.
This is the Secretary of Agriculture's third trip into Cuba, leading a trade mission of state lawmakers and farm leaders.
So we're down here for that reason, to try to sell produce from Oklahoma that we have an excess in, that we export to the closest exporter that we could go to, 90 miles off the shores, 56 hours for a load of wheat from Port of Houston to Havana, and that's our purpose here, to try to sell them products from Oklahoma.
And that we've done. In the fall of 2004, the first ship in over 40 years arrived in Cuba filled full of Oklahoma wheat, a sale worth more than $4 million.
Well, this could be a $100 million market for Oklahoma wheat producers, and obviously, logistically, we're located in an area that it should be Oklahoma wheat producers' market, and it very easily could be.
And it's here where things start to get complicated. Even though the Cuban government has proven itself to very much be a willing buyer, and Oklahoma farmers certainly are willing sellers. Increasingly, bureaucratic obstacles put up by our own federal government are making such sales harder to come by. Unlike other countries we export to, Cuba must pay in cash and before delivery for everything shipped from the U.S., a hurdle that angers the Cuban government and frustrates Oklahoma farmers.
The embargo's been on for 45 years, and as we stand around and watch the people come up and down this street, you see that they're happy, they're healthy, they have a good education system. I think it's time, instead of embargoing against these people, we try to love them to death. I think we have a better chance of having that freedom in this country than we do by trying to suppress them.
Several congressional leaders from farm states have signed on to legislation that would lessen such trade restrictions. But among Oklahoma's congressional delegation, only one has supported the bill, a fact Cuban officials pointed out in meeting after meeting after meeting.
Ahora, el sector agrícola de los Estados Unidos es un sector poderoso.
The U.S. farming community is strong, and if they can partner with other exporters, I am sure that before long, U.S. sanctions against Cuba will be over, because public opinion favors it.
But to date, that shows no sign of happening, despite the fact that 38 states have now signed agreements to export to Cuba.
Tuviéramos una relación normal de comercio y de servicio y de turismo.
In a normalized trade scenario, Oklahoma wheat sales to Cuba would multiply it by 3 to 4 times.
Sales that Peach hopes to expand to other Oklahoma farm commodities.
The Cuban market's going to be a growing market for not only wheat market, but other crops like dairy products, maybe some timber products, pork, and also for some beef products.
And Cuban officials have agreed to buy another multi-million-dollar shipload of Oklahoma wheat, a move Oklahoma Senator Charles Wyrick hopes will bring us another step closer to normalized relations.
I think things are changing. I think in the last several years, the way people are viewing Cuba, I think the best way that we can address that is, to open these markets and open a relationship with the people of both of our state and the people of this nation and the people of the United States. And I think we'll see increase in opening the markets. I think you'll see a cultural exchange. I think there's some good things that can come from this.
And to date, that is where we are. While there are those in both countries that will agree that political reform is inextricably linked with economic progress, just what that political reform is and how far it goes and how soon it gets there is very much still in debate.
Pat Wallison is a bean exporter and the president of Westar Food.
Everything going okay today?
And in Cuba, beans are a big business.
The Cubans do love beans. Their consumption is the highest per capita of any country in the world, so they eat a lot of beans.
Some of those beans come from Wallison's packaging facility. But this isn't Havana. It's Corpus Christi, Texas.
When I tell people, they'll ask, what's your company do? And so, we export some beans to Cuba, and they're like, you can't do that, can you?
He not only can, he has for over 9 years, filling entire container ships with 10,000 bags of North Dakota-grown beans at a time.
The last shipment we did was about $3.2 million.
Go inside Forbidden Cuba.
I think most Americans would be surprised to hear that we are shipping to Cuba.
Sanctions with loopholes.
The last shipment we did was $3.2 million.
An embargo that isn't.
The United States is Cuba's 4th or 5th largest trading partner.
Capitalist potential.
I've had my eye on the market for 15 years.
In communist Cuba, Forbidden Fortune. Premieres Monday, March 26th, 9 Eastern on CNBC.